Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. We still have more than half our summer to go here in East Tennessee, so if you're frustrated that mosquitoes are ruining your outdoor fun and carrying off your children, call Southeast Termite and Pest Control. They have a treatment that will clear out the skeeters and leave the good insects undisturbed. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, they do a great job. They've been my pest control company for many a year now. SoutheastTermite.com. All right, been a lot of chatter online, and this is how the business works now with YouTube and podcasts. It used to be you had unscrupulous journalists out there. There were some. Now it's just people looking for clicks. And once somebody puts a click out there, everybody else jumps on it because they want the click. It's like, ooh, look, he's getting clicks. Then we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then it gets so big that we in the actual media have to talk about it. So for all I know, this is total nonsense. Somebody just threw it out and it's taken off. But there is talk that Texas A&M may be headed to the Big Ten. They are so mad that the SEC supposedly, and Feinbaum talked about this recently, the SEC had told them, okay, Texas never gets in. You're the Texas school. And then Mike Slive stepped aside, Greg Sankey stepped in and said, we're bringing in Texas when they asked. And everybody in the league said, yeah, sorry, A&M, kiss it, we're bringing them in. And they're mad about that, which I would be too. The question is, do you think A&M would be mad enough to leave? And one last thing, for years the SEC used to brag about the fact that, well, we don't have an exit fee in our league. 3 years ago, they put an exit fee in. If you give them notice, 2 years notice, it's $30 million. If you don't give notice, it's $45 million. So the SEC now thinks somebody could leave or you don't do that. Anybody here think A&M would actually flee Texas again and go to the Big Ten?
I don't, but I also didn't think Texas and Oklahoma would be part of the SEC. So I can't discount it, but I'd be very surprised.
I don't know that we can discount anything anymore, can we?
No.
Yeah. I would be surprised.
I call Texas A&M's bluff. Now, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, the reason why Texas A&M wanted to get away from Texas in the first place, besides just the pesky, annoying, and the recruiting that goes back and forth, I thought it was a whole lot of the whole because the Big 12 was bowing down to Texas, the Longhorn Network, and it went. Well, now they're in the SEC, and Greg Sankey has slammed the scepter down and said, no, they're all equals. We're 16 equals. That's the way the conference is. What's the problem now, Texas A&M? The way I look at it is love it or leave it. Get out if you don't like it, A&M.
Josh?
Never say never in a lot of things, and that's absolutely the case in college athletics now. We're in a world where Cal and Stanford play in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and Oregon and Washington are making their move to the Big Ten. So could one school jump from here to there? Colorado went back to the Big 12. I know it's not the size of Texas A&M. I would still be really surprised. I'm sure that they're going to hate Texas being in the SEC. I'm sure behind closed doors and sometimes publicly they're going to complain about Texas being in the SEC. But I think the Aggies will remain in the SEC while doing that complaining.
Yeah, they already hate them for stealing their baseball coach.
I am an honorary Aggie. I'm already out. I thought Texas was a dumb move. I don't think Mike Slive makes that move. I don't think Mike Slive, based on what he did, he used to get everybody and all his ducks in a row, then he would make an announcement. Sankey seems to be going the other way. The train leads him sometimes. He also says I and me a whole lot more than Mike Slive ever did. So when I look at this Texas thing and bringing in them, double crossing, I think Slive, he constantly talked about, what was the line? We'll have vigorous discussion or something. He would admit the fact that people would argue, but we all got on the same page.
The First Amendment is alive and well.
I think he would have looked at this and said, wait a second. We are bringing disharmony into this league to screw over one of our own, someone that I brought in and I made a promise to. I don't think they do this if Sankey were, or if Slive were still the commissioner. So I think it's going to be the mark of Cain, the original sin. I think however long the SEC lasts, at some point we're going to look back and say, it was screwing over A&M and bringing Texas in that bit them in the butt.
Maybe I'm on an island on this, but wouldn't be the best way of trying to combat everything Texas is doing is just beat them in sports? And then there's also this whole, and maybe this is a little juvenile or high school of me, what's that reputation of Texas A&M going to be if they actually leave the SEC? What keeps them from wherever their new conference is? What keeps them in 6 or 7 years going, I don't like the color of the wall paint. I want out of this conference too, over and over. And I understand
Texas is doing that.
Right, exit fees, but at the same time, At one point, if I'm Texas A&M, I got to turn to the boogeyman and go, this ends now. So how are we going to figure it? I'm not, not loser leaves town type pro wrestling, but you got to figure out something where you can just go, all right, we can't get rid of you, so how do we exterminate you for good?
I think your idea, look, Sankey has tried to make it clear that they are one of 16, and they've turned their Longhorn network into an online network now. It's an archive of all their stuff online. But I'm not so sure they're not going to come in and try and run this league. We may be hearing, oh no, they're going to be just like everybody else. You tell that to Texas. I'm not sure. We'll see how that works. That's like Notre Dame. Everybody wants them in their conference. I don't know how good of a conference mate they would be if they were a full-fledged member of a conference. I don't know.
Yes or no, did Alabama kind of get their way shoving things around in the SEC? You debate that. Being in the backyard, maybe some people would say that Saban in Alabama, things kind of got run through with Alabama, but I don't think Texas is going to come in, whether you believe it or not, and get the same beneficial treatment, if you will.
I don't know what was the beneficial treatment they
I'm
got.
talking about to an extent of just like, hey, we're going to play in the backyard of Alabama. There's some of those other quiet whispers. Again, it could
Talking
also
about
be
perception.
Yes, please, perception.
Think about this too. Harvey Schiller, back in about 1989, wanted Texas, Texas A&M, and he wanted Florida State and Miami. Okay. I wonder if there was an objection from one of the Texas schools at that time as to why that never unfolded. I don't know.
I found a story when we were doing the Mr. SEC thing years ago. I found a story from the time where Schiller was actually discussing with someone. It had been like 10 years after the fact, so it was mid-'90s. And he talked about the fact that Texas felt the SEC wasn't up to academic standards. So they didn't come, and that's when Joe Dean really wanted A&M in. LSU was the number one in terms of getting A&M in. They wanted them, and Joe Dean was behind it. So Joe Dean went to Houston, who at that time was killing it in basketball and football, and tried to pair Texas A&M with Houston. And the league just said, they don't fit. That's not like any of our other schools. Now, that was an article written with Schiller giving some quotes. Who knows? I would assume back then in that day it wasn't just a podcast, so I'm going to give it a little accuracy. I'll believe it. Yeah. But it is interesting, the Texas thing and their attitude. We'll see. I just don't see it being a fit, but we'll see how it plays out. I don't think that gives A&M the impetus to leave. I do think you look like chickens if you leave.
I think the SEC is more likely to have schools taking us against them mindset. I'm not saying Alabama and Auburn are going to be buddies now, but when the Longhorn Network's happening, the Big 12 schools had a mindset of, man, we really need Texas. We can't afford to lose them to the Pac-12, Pac-10 to the 12 at the time. But the SEC has enough schools that believe in themselves, Tennessee, Florida, LSU, Bama, Auburn, that I think they could say, no, you're not going to just push us around. Texas will try. But I don't think it'll be as easy against the SEC powers as it was the Big 12 teams that already saw themselves below Texas.
Yeah, and in that league, you had Texas and Oklahoma who even got a bigger share of the cash, because they were so important. Good point. All right, when we come back, there aren't just rumors about A&M leaving. There are rumors about Clemson and Florida State leaving the ACC soon and possibly landing in the SEC. Let's discuss that next. Come on back.